Okay, moving along, and about a week ago, I did maybe about 2 weeks ago, I did a video about, it's called "Is Your IT Staff Snooping on You?" And I've gotten some responses to that. This is a story that kind of is circulating around the web, and I wanted to talk about a little bit this evening. And it all began with a survey done by a company called CyberArk, which basically went on to say they did a survey and they found somewhere between a third to close to half of the IT people surveyed admitted to reading their employers' or co-workers' email, looking up things like personnel files, reading sensitive information they had no business reading. And this has been kind of circulating, this story is being picked up by a lot of news sources on the internet, and particularly a recent article done by a Damon Poeter on ChannelWeb, talks the headline, "Study Raises Specter of Email Snooping by IT Pros." A little while ago, I was talking about Terry Childs and sensationalist journalism, and I'm going to go right back to that, this whole thing here. But the first paragraph of the story says, "Many employees in the modern workplace simply assume their electronic communications are being read by IT administration." A new study released Thursday by IT security firm CyberArk Software shows that those assumptions are not too far off base. Okay, let's stop at that point. If you manage or own a company, you set rules as to what your employees can do and cannot do with company equipment. That's the computers, everything else they've got in the organization. And I would assume that many of you set use policies, or how it's to be used, what you can do and what you can't do, and you have this as official company policy. I know in smaller organizations things tend to get a little fast and loose, and we don't necessarily mind if an employee is, browsing the web, checking, Sports Center or whatever on their lunch break or what have you. It's when there's an abuse of this sort of thing. We certainly don't want email used for non-company business, but quite frankly, it does happen all the time. Now, should an employee expect to their IT department to be reading their emails? Well, I have always had this philosophy, and that is that you don't do anything through email, on the internet, through the web, that you wouldn't want somebody else to read. You shouldn't, you just shouldn't really be doing that. You should always realize somewhere out there, everything is being more or less recorded somehow. So you have to be very, very careful about what you're doing. But the question is really snooping. There's a big difference, and this is one of the things about this survey. And it was kind of interesting because I did visit the CyberArk website today, and I discovered and learned that CyberArk produces a product called Enterprise Password Vault, Business Vault, Sensitive Document Vault, and an appliance, a security appliance. So their business is essentially selling enterprise-level security software. And now they have a survey that says that the IT department people are snooping, and I think what they have is a set of tools that would help prevent that. And I'm going to kind of take the position that if I want a particular result from a survey, I'm pretty sure that I can get the result that I want if I work at it long enough and hard enough. And companies have used FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, for many, many years to sell products and market their services. Am I suggesting that CyberArk is doing this? No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just thinking I'm doing some critical thought here, and this survey is doing some real damage out there. It's circulating around, and now companies are getting the impression that their IT people can't be trusted. Well, that is a false assumption. The article goes on to say, but color at least one IT expert skeptical about the results of a CyberArk survey. Tom MacArthur, president of the Weston, Massachusetts-based IT security service provider Storebase, wonders if the vagueness of the word snooping, or the snooping question, might have skewed the responses. Well, what does snooping mean? I don't mean to sound like Bill Clinton and go, well, that depends what the meaning of is. You see, some network admins, if you establish a policy for the use of email that says we don't want it being used for these particular purposes, will set up an account to monitor that policy and to make sure it's being complied with. Is that snooping? Are they interested in the details of the email, or more what the fashion is of the email is? Is that snooping? Well, that's a very vague and ambiguous word. If you're simply making sure that employees follow company policy, and then that would not be, in my opinion, snooping. However, somebody may feel that it is and would have answered the question that yes, they were. So that could skew the results of the survey. Says it's not, the article goes on to say, as I said, it's not uncommon for email admins to set up an acceptable use policy, and they'll monitor that. And then it's completely legitimate in my mind. Now that I have heard of some of the IT guys I know have a chuckle about what they find, we caught them saying this or that. But it's not snooping because it's company policy. And that's really what it's about. You're enforcing company policy. Now, this particular author makes a case, well, this could make outsourcing your IT more appealing, because if I outsource things like my email and that sort of thing to a disinterested party, then they would be less likely to be interested in what we're talking about here. Well, you could make that case, but we still go back to the fact if you have IT folks working for you, or if you have a managed services provider, whoever you trust that's running your IT department, why did you hire them to begin with? Because you felt they were the best people to do the job, they were competent, they were proficient, and you felt they were essentially honest people, want to do a good job. And I think that just because an article or a survey is released doesn't change the caliber of person that you're employing to do this work. Nor do I think that you need to have another reason to distrust somebody. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. People are human, and some people do take advantage of certain situations. But you know what? That same kind of mentality would, if they were in accounting, if they weren't in IT and they were in a different department, they would still be tempted to snoop or pry, put their nose where it doesn't belong anyway. It's not necessary. See, that's the thing. I think one could take away from all these articles that it's, it's somehow IT, because you're in IT, makes you more prone to do this sort of thing. And I totally disagree. I think it's a people issue. It's the kind of person that they are is really the problem here, not because, that they're in IT.